Hello. In the last sections, we worked extensively in our knowledge graph. But sometimes we also need to clean things up, things that have been generated automatically, for example. Let's take one question into account. Sales in Springfield. Springfield is a city in the US, and we're asking for its sales. But actually, there are 4 different Springfields in the US, all in different states. But Veezoo shows only one number because Veezoo doesn't know. The class city has been set up with the city name, which is not unique. Therefore, the class of the city is set up wrong. It should have one unique identifier and then a name, just like the example with the customer we had, where we have a customer ID and a customer name. The ID is unique, the name does not have to be, and the same. We need to build here. Easy way to do that is to adjust this SQL statement. So when we look into the entities, we see here Albuquerque, for example, its name, its ID. And if we go back and change its SQL to a concatenation between city and state, and then also use the name SQL tag to give it a more beautiful name or label. Save that, sync the entities, and then go to the entities, search for Springfield, and you see that we now have 4 different Springfields, all with their states attached. So let's refresh and ask the question again. Sales in Springfield. There are several cities named Springfield, and here's the sales for each of them. Let's ask another question. So, what line items have we sold last week? When this question comes back, we do see that we are seeing a line item represented by its SQL value, which is currently the row ID, which gives us basically no information about the line item itself. There's something like city, country, region, customers. Finally, there's something which actually gives us more information about the line item, which is the product. Veezoo kind of guesses what are the elements that we want to see, and it uses the knowledge graph as a basis for that. So therefore, we can flesh out the knowledge graph, add more information, and make the visuals that Veezoo shows deliberate. For example, there's a row ID over here, and that is also a class in our data, and therefore not really valuable to anyone. So coming back over here, we have the class called row. That is the row ID, something no user will ever ask for. So therefore, let's hide it, and therefore it is currently in the knowledge graph. And put it hidden on true, refresh, and it's gone. Let's do our question again. What line items have we sold last week? And we see that nothing has really changed because we just have hidden a class called row ID, which is different to the unique identifier, which is also the row ID for our line item. So we can make sure that Veezoo always presents the same information that is hopefully intended when people are asking about line items. For this, we can use the display with function. So when we're asking for line items, I actually want to have the product. I want its category, for example, and I'm actually interested in its sales. Saving that, coming back, refreshing, asking the same question again. You will see that now we do have a product, we have its category and its sales, exactly what we identified that line item should be displayed with. We still have the line item identifier though, because this is what makes a line item unique. We can use a tag show only representers to not show the identifier of our class. Saving, refreshing, asking the same question again. And what we're presented with is now the same table as we've seen before, just without the row ID. And all of that work can be quite tedious, but we need to go through knowledge graph and make sure that every class and every attribute is used to its intent. Because otherwise, the AI will guess. Guessing produces error. But it's quite tedious to do that all by hand. So therefore, we can just ask for change. Look at the knowledge graph and put in proper descriptions, synonyms, and check for any other best practices that should be applied. Proper spelling would help Veezoo out, but it will get it nevertheless. So now Veezoo will check each and every individual file that is compiled by the knowledge graph and apply best practices that are baked into Veezoo. And then we are presented with something that you've already seen. So all the changes we need to check, and then we need to deliberately apply them with the confirm button. So for example, now put in descriptions, synonyms for each and every class, but for example, also on discount, it changed the default aggregation to an average, which does make sense for the discount. So it helps us to scale a lot and be a lot faster in maintaining and fleshing out this knowledge graph. So what we've done here, automatically done by AI, done by Veezoo, is not something we shouldn't just take for granted. Because here is another example of a knowledge graph based on the same data and the same data source. Imagine your users have to keep up with weird namings like dim shipment, dim product, fact orders, which are created at and have no order date. When you hover over something, there are no descriptions, only a couple of synonyms. Users do not have all the information they need to have an understanding about the knowledge graph. They don't know what is in there, and it's quite hard for them to understand what kind of questions they can ask. When you think about these names, you should not only let AI do the job, but really think about it. What is it? And not what is it technically, but what is it for the business users? As an example, they created that right here in fact orders. That is our order date. And therefore, we should name it like that. So people can actually identify what each field means and therefore make use of it. But that's just the one side. On the other side, the more information you give to Veezoo, the better the answers will be. Having descriptions in there, having synonyms, so that when people are asking questions, they can do that in their terms. All of these little things add up to something that people actually use. So therefore, once we put the confirmation button in here, and then, look at our knowledge graph, we can see that this is way easier for people to understand. Proper names, proper descriptions, loads of synonyms that they can just ask for using their own language makes the whole knowledge graph usable. With that, you're off to the next module. Take the quiz, have fun.